Do you want to add layers to your ogres? Well then stop treating them like they're disposable savage brutes. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here to talk to you about changing up ogres for your game, and we are going to dive into that. But before we do, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down to hit that subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you dashingly awesome folks such as yourselves have already gone and listed yourself on such a legendary roster, then go on down to hit the like button and subscribe here to the channel and become a regular member. But now, let's go ahead and start talking about this a little bit. Let's start peeling back some of these layers. So, when it comes to ogres, for a lot of these games, there's some things that are pretty universal. That high strength and that very high degree of stupidity, that low intelligence score. Those are the two most common features. Otherwise, they're pretty typically the inbred cast-off slaves of giant kind and the like, which accounts for the high strength and the low intelligence. And it's just, they're a classic, they're a staple, they're right up there with orcs, goblins, trolls, and the like, but it gets old pretty fast. I mean, you want to change it up a little bit, and that's the point of this series. So, what can we really do, though, to work with all of that? And unfortunately, on the one hand, not much, because there's not much. I mean, there is some stuff there, but nothing that I really want to work with. But on the other hand, that also frees us up to just begin stripping things away and leave them a little bit more of a blank slate in order to start filling in what we want and applying them to different cultures. So we have to think about cultures that really valued that high degree of physical strength, which, to be fair, a lot of different cultures did at different times and in different ways. Sometimes some of it was valuing that athleticism, like the ancient Greeks and the starting the Olympics and everything. And then there's that athletic strength, and then that physical strength, and then the combat prowess as well. Every culture viewed those things, has admired and viewed those things in slightly different ways throughout time, at different points in time, shifting exactly how they decided to interpret all of that. So again, that kind of opens up our playground a little bit here with what we want to add into this particular set that we have going. And the one thing that kind of sticks out to me are the different German states, the different German people. I'm thinking of the Landsknechts and also Frederick Barbarossa of Germany. Germany, as we know of it and conceive of it now, didn't really quite exist then, because you have the different German states and Otto von Bismarck forming it. So we're reaching back towards medieval to Renaissance history, right around different series of crusades. And Frederick Barbarossa set to really unify the different feuding fiefdoms and German princes in the region of Germania, and tried to really consolidate power, and was able to do so well enough that he became the Holy Roman Emperor. He was crowned as such by the papacy, and he managed to forge all of that together, but died on crusade. And they really did, though, value that high degree of strength there. And why do we want to throw ogres into there, besides the fact that they also have that high degree of physical strength? Well, it livens them up quite a bit. And what do I mean by that? Well, one thing to understand, that despite what popular culture, TV, and media might have shown you otherwise, medieval people and Renaissance people definitely, especially, really loved having color in their lives. Things were not drab and dirty and filthy all the time. They were absolutely stunningly gorgeous, well decorated, well put together, and they did bathe. They did clean themselves with some degree of regularity. More if you were wealthier, sure, but still. So they're cleaner and had a lot more color, and had their lives, or very much so, enriched with all all of this culture that the medieval world could muster. So this is something we can easily throw our ogres into, and this is why I want to use that color, that appearance, especially for the Landsknechts, which, if you don't know, those were German mercenaries, and they were legendary badasses. Like, those were the guys that had those, to us, funny looking poofy pants kind of around the hips and waist area, and had those alternating two-tone color leggings and shirts and the like. It really stood out, but that was the point. They wanted to stand out, especially while they were kicking your ass. They were gonna look good doing it and do good at it. Going into battle with the messers, the pikes, spears, arquebuses, and greatswords, they would absolutely wreck shop on the battlefield. They'd tear anybody apart pretty reliably, hence why they could sell their services at a premium, and that's something that you can very readily do with ogres. Hell, if you wanted to keep the lower intelligence score, you can do that. Even creatures of simple cunning can understand tactics, and that moving in block formations means they're gonna survive better. And that high strength really works well for two-handed weapons like pikes, like greatswords. Weapons like that really suit them. And if we're going into the Frederick Barbarossa's era, that mail armor, and then you have the plate armor going over top of the that chainmail as well. So heavy metal defense there, and then the castles that they built as well, and the siege warfare. Absolutely incredible. I mean, imagine what ogre versions of trebuchet could do to something. I mean, the stones that they could throw around and just wield so easily, and combining all of that medieval architecture and that castle work with arquebuses and the like. You could absolutely have a lot of fun putting this together, and having all that color with it, those beautiful rolling, rippling banners just swaying and pulling along in the wind. Absolutely something that you can and should make use of. But going on from that, there are two other mentions for ogre cultures that I feel like I should make here, and they're not original to me. They're from other settings. They're the two most distinct depictions of ogres that I can think of outside of just what I've come up with here. One are the ogre kingdoms from Warhammer Fantasy, which are based loosely off of the Huns, perhaps the Mongols. There's not a lot of knowledge on who the Huns were as a people beyond the incredible amounts of damage they inflicted on Rome, especially under Attila. But the ogre kingdoms, though, they are along the Warhammer Worlds version of the Silk Road, and they ply their services as mercenaries, and a lot of their culture is built around eating and feasting. They're not dumb creatures, they're just kind of short-sighted in thinking from one meal to the next. Now, that plenty of them are able to think long-term, it's just their drive for eating. It's what fuels a lot of their magic, as they worship the Great Maw. So a lot of their culture is built around cooking, eating, and their magic is built around that as well too. It's fairly unique and interesting, and with those Hunnish kind of aesthetics that they have around them, it all comes together to blend into a fairly interesting depiction for ogres. And then the third notion that came to mind regarding ogres was that from Kryn from the Dragonlance series, which, gosh, I don't think really had much mention as far as Dungeons and Dragons went since 2nd edition, right up until 5th edition started talking about them again, talking about Kryn and Dragonlance as a whole. But ogres in the world of Kryn started off as beautiful, statuesque, almost maybe not Titan size, but Titan-like in their reverence and how ancient and storied they were at first. Statuesque, bluish hues of skin, absolutely stunningly beautiful and powerful, and wielding incredible magics as well. But they were cruel. They were cruel and arrogant, and enslaved much of the world's populations. And it wasn't until I forget the ogre's name, but one ogre in particular learned a great deal of empathy when he ended up connecting with a human slave that had saved his daughter's life. An infant child, somewhere in there, very small ogre baby person, got saved by a human slave, and out of gratitude, the ogre began interacting with her more and realized, wow, this is like a thinking human being, or well, a thinking living creature capable of complex thoughts and capable of interacting with me. Have we really been getting this wrong the whole and it started off a small movement that became a splinter group that moved away and managed to narrowly avoid a curse that befell the entire ogre species, the rest of the ogre species, where their inward appearance would end up impacting their outward appearance, and they would become truly as ugly as they were, and had a massive fall from grace that really tore a lot of their empire apart. Now, they still exist, they're still around, they're still not stupid, simple creatures, or at least not entirely, and some of them can still wield incredible magics, but they're not what they once were. Things have fundamentally changed for them and for the world of Krynn. So, those are two other interesting depictions and ideas for ogres, and all three of these together, I hope you will take and just really run with it. Run with these ideas and start changing things up, because while the ogres are a staple, they do get very plain and boring, to the point that I actually don't often use them, and when I do use them, I usually have them in place in conjunctions with traps. I do still try to build stories around them, but having a high strength, easily disposable character in place to help push the players into traps is usually how I use them, and that's unfortunate, because it's like, oh, this is a disposable piece, we don't have to think too much about that, when really you want to think just a little bit more, have a bit more story there, a bit more reasoning, have it be that much more impactful. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Go on down and make your voices heard, and we'll engage in discussion down below. Hit those like or dislike buttons, and remember, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down to hit that subscribe button and become a regular member. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.